So we took a break from our Stardew Valley binge, didn't we? To watch a movie finally.
Yes,
Although you've been watching movies the whole time, haven't you?
somewhat.
No, you haven't.
You're right.
But anyway, one of the movies that we watched was Labyrinth, or Labyrinths.
You're an idiot.
This, yep, this is a little Jim Henson, David Bowie, Terry Jones joint, isn't it? Little,
Kind of.
little fun little musical romp adventure flick. What do you think of it?
Well, I saw it before you did.
Wow, that's mean.
What?
Throwing me on the spot like that. That's my job.
Oh, I liked it.
No, you didn't. I saw you throw your Blu-ray in the trash when it was done.
I watched it on 4K,
Wow.
which is still
You're gonna
technically
tell the
a
audience
Blu-ray.
about your new TV now? Is that what it is? You're just gonna flex on the audience now? You're just
Nope,
stunting on the audience now?
don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, what is Labyrinth? Can you explain the movie? We do this all the time. It's a good place to
Yep.
start.
It's I mean, it's basically like a kid's movie. It's a coming of age movie. I think you could read deeper things into it. I mean, it seems intentional, not like they didn't know what they were doing or something. But it's sort of, I mean, at the very beginning of the film, it shows a girl who is not interested in growing up, kind of. She wants to live in a fantasy world, but like getting her wish may not actually be the thing that's best for her life.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is fine to revisit the fantasy world when she would like to or when she needs to, but that it's also okay to grow up and take responsibility for things. So it seems like kind of a mixing of like fantasy kid book tropes, like Wizard of Oz, Where the Wild Things Are, Alice in Wonderland type stuff.
Yeah.
And then, having your issues with, like parents' divorce or relationships not working out, and people going off and doing their own things with their life and not being in that weird age where you're not necessarily a baby. You have to take care of things, but you're not necessarily an adult either at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in all the while, it's under the guise, I guess, of this
Of a huge codpiece.
darker Muppet movie. He's not wearing a codpiece. It's just full on. Yeah, but of course it's a Jim Henson movie, so you can expect lots of wonderful puppetry and incredibly designed puppets and creatures, which I think really work in this case and help kind of build out the fantasy world while also kind of keeping it in line with the main character, I guess, because she has all those like stuffed animals in her room and all that. So then having the puppets feel like very true to her own imagination, which is what I'm presuming the whole movie was kind of supposed to be, right? They're all kind of imaginary friends in a way.
Well, I mean, at the very beginning of the film, how it like goes across the things that are on her table.
Yeah.
And in the background, it's like it's all the stuff that's in the movie.
Yeah. So it's kind of I thought using the Muppets, are they Muppets just because they're Jim Henson? Is that the thing?
Right.
Yeah. Not because like it's not Kermit or anything like that, but that's just his puppetry stuff and this and Dark Crystal and all of the Muppet stuff, yeah. Sesame Street. But
yeah, I mean, because I think the place where they create the puppetry is Muppet Labs.
Right.
So I would like the Henson Creation Studio or whatever. So
yeah. So I think that using the Muppets to tell the fantasy adventure and having all of the characters she meets along the way be like stuffed animals almost is a really good way for her fantasy world to feel a little bit more like in line with who she is, I guess. I don't know. Know what I mean?
yes. Every
Okay.
time I saw the dog, it made me think of Sprocket from Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I was thinking of just the big dog from the brown dog from the Muppets for whatever reason. Oh wait, we're thinking about
Rolf?
different things. I was thinking about the big guy that was like with the horns. For some reason, he
Oh,
reminded me of him.
wait
You were
up for
thinking of
me!
you were thinking of the actual dog.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I'd almost have to look it up.
Is Fraggle Rock a Henson's company
Yeah.
thing? Yeah, forgot about that. I watched that too.
Dance your fears away. Worries for another day. Let your children play.
Fraggle Rock.
I mean, they obviously look different, but
Yeah.
it made me think.
And while this is still a kids movie, it is a little bit darker than your standard Muppet fare, is it not? A little bit. Yeah, that dog
Yeah, I mean,
looks
I
kind of
don't.
similar.
I mean, to me, I mean, even the Muppet movie like has scenes of peril. I mean, like Kermit's about to get like tortured, and they want to like
Yeah,
kill him for his legs.
yeah,
So I mean, and it's like a
that's true.
relationship film. And then the Great Muppet Caper is about like robbery and a girl going to prison, and So it's like they did touch on, but it's sort of like having a human character be the central character rather than a puppet. And so when she goes through things, like you might actually fear for the girl rather
Yeah,
than an abstract character. So it's like that might do you think? But at this point too, I mean, it wasn't that long after this that like The Secret of Nim came out and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So it was like there was a lot of stuff, especially I feel like in the '80s, that a lot of the kid stuff was darker.
yeah. Was this
Anyway,
before or after Dark Crystal?
I
Because while I
want
think that this one is better, that one I think is still a little bit darker because there's like brutal puppet murder and that and shit.
yeah. Dark Crystal was '82.
Yeah, this was like 86, I thought.
Labyrinth is '86. Yeah, so
Bam, look at
Labyrinth
that.
was after.
Yeah, it's a fun little film that I think is like heightened further by its Muppetry. Like it's one of those obviously can't work without it, I guess. That's all Henson kind of stuff.
Well,
But I think that it really yep.
I mean, how do you feel about Dark Crystal? You've seen it, right?
Yeah, it's not great.
It's kind of forgettable, right?
Yeah,
It's like an
it's
interesting
really
idea.
slow and I don't know. I feel like having only puppets. I haven't watched the miniseries. Apparently the miniseries is actually like legitimately way better than the movie was because it was like big and grand and kind of what he intended. I don't know. Dark Crystal was like felt rushed, but also it was too slow. It reminded me of Legend, the Ridley Scott movie,
Right. Which
where it
was
was
filmed
like,
at like the same time as Labyrinth.
oh, well, Labyrinth is way better. But like, yeah, Dark Crystal I thought was largely forgettable, even though it was like still incredible puppet designs and all of the work with the Muppets and all of that is all fantastic. But as an
It's
actual
sort of
film, it's
like
not great.
right. I would agree with you. I think that there's a lot of like interesting concepts there and them trying to get away from the whole like Muppet Show thing.
Yeah,
I kind of wonder if this film would have the same fate without Bowie.
probably more than likely. I think he carries a lot, even though he's not really in it very much, but even through his music and all that. Because
Well,
even though he didn't do the score, I think the score is a lot, it feels a lot based on some of his songs to kind of like keep them tonally in line with each other.
and he plays it very camp, and everything else is played very straight. I almost feel like
Well, look at again, Legend, right? Legend is only good
when
when
as
Tim
soon
Curry comes in.
exactly because Tim
Like
Curry's fucking fantastic. I wish the whole
the
movie was about him.
oh yeah, the hour and 40 minutes before Tim Curry shows up is boring.
I mean, I do like Mia Sara because she was Ferris Bueller's girlfriend.
Man, that was about 35 seconds of a total cutout.
Oh, you didn't hear any of that?
Didn't hear any of that ever since we were talking. We like the second we mentioned Tim Curry.
Oh,
So I'm
well,
gonna say just go again because I don't even know if it would record
okay, no problem. Yeah, so Mia Sara is in it, and that's
in
Ferris Bueller's girlfriend.
which one? Legend?
Legend.
Yeah,
So I, as a young kid, was interested because that's Ferris Bueller's girlfriend.
yeah,
But no, it's like Tim Curry is the reason why that film is anything
yes.
because he's so much fun. And
But he
so
doesn't
it's
show
like,
up until like an hour and 40 minutes into it.
right. So having Jareth show up multiple times throughout the film, while I still feel like, wow, I wish David Bowie was in the entire thing. It's he's sprinkled enough into it to where like I'm still interested. I mean, which is
Yeah,
weird to say in a Jennifer Connelly movie because I love
that's what I was
Jennifer
gonna
Connelly.
say. So when you brought up it's maybe a human character in it makes you feel more for her, I was only like, that's only because you don't like seeing your bae in trouble.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing that's really interesting. Like, she is a kid actor, but
Hmm.
she like naturally both exudes like I would almost say like timidity or like that she's vulnerable, but at the same time she can also be strong and figure things out on her own. And
It's the perfect coming of age actor in which they are both mature and yet naive at the same time.
yes, and so she
They
does that
hit the
balance
perfect
really
line
well.
where you can go one way or the other, and then eventually you lean into towards the end of it, the more coming into the maturity kind of thing.
Right. And she emotes really well with her eyes,
Hmm.
which is something that someone like Tom Cruise in Legend doesn't do well.
Sure.
You know.
Could be because poor direction as well.
Yeah, I mean Ridley
Firing
Scott's
shots
not
at Ridley Scott.
necessarily he's well, but he's not necessarily known for being an actor's director. He's more known for like pushing technical prowess.
He needs a good script for it to be anything, and that does not have a good script.
Right.
I feel like there was a story with Legend where it was like really cut to shit too, or something.
Yeah, and I think they had to like refilm certain things. Like there are different. I want to say there's even like different editions on physical media too, just
I
like
think
with
there
Blade
is.
Runner.
Yeah.
So, and it's been a long time since I've even seen it, so I'd have to watch it again. I remember the production design being really fascinating, but the story is very bland.
Well, and it's just downright boring, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah, I mean it's just the good version we've seen
Yeah.
a billion times.
So out of all of the mid to late 80s fantasy movies, this is probably the best one.
Excalibur is better.
I haven't seen that one.
John Borman, I believe that's his name. I hope I'm remembering that correctly. The same guy that directed Zardoz.
I haven't seen that either.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you're making
Zardoz
obscure
is
references.
Great. Man. Love that movie. That's the one with Sean Connery in a red diaper.
Oh God, I've seen that picture though.
Yeah, but the direction behind it and the ideas are actually like really fucking fascinating. I mean, it is solidly a cult film.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think in the U.S. the only people that released it was Twilight Time, who is now out of business.
Oh God. Bum, bum, ba, bam.
But I think Arrow might have a Region B Blu-ray of it, if I remember correctly.
So you think that David Bowie is the primary reason that this movie works for you?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's the reason why it is as memorable and is on 4K.
Sure. Definitely, certainly the Bowie music definitely elevated it to like more than mainstream status, I guess, if that makes any sense.
He has so much fun in it.
Yeah, and it's like massive star power. It's like bringing in like one of the heaviest guns to write a soundtrack. It's just nothing can even compare. And some of the music in the movie, like Magic Dance and stuff, like I don't remember the other names of the songs, but they're all just like certified bangers throughout. Like all of the songs are amazing.
Yeah, they are what is termed as earworms, that once you hear them, then you can't forget them.
Yeah, bangers. If you
slap.
bang your head to, they slap, slapping that ass.
As all the young kids say.
Yeah, but a lot of the reason I found this movie kind of worked for me, honestly, was the script, because I didn't know it was written by Terry Jones, but then once I found out I could see it a lot, I felt like he actually went kind of Python-y in a lot of places. Some of the little characters we meet are very like ridiculous and absurd and over the top. I'm thinking like the worm at the start who's like, oh, come on in and meet the missus.
Yeah. That
or like the two shield guys. There were just like four of them, and it's like, I don't know, you'll have to ask them up there. Oh, we don't know. Why did you talk to the guys down below? And maybe it was all of the creatures having like British accents too. But when a lot of like the more ridiculous moments, I just felt like Python the entire time. I don't know why. Maybe it was just me. But like I think the squirrel on the bridge, like the thing I was thinking at that part was like, oh, what's your favorite color?
Right.
But
it's kind of interesting because he wrote I guess it was the original script, and then they had a bunch of rewrites, and I guess it changed a lot of the dynamics of the film, and like it lost its humor, and so they brought Jones back later to punch it up and put more, like reinsert jokes back in. So I don't know.
Well, maybe that's why
it's Frankenstein. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's not ridiculous the entire time. Maybe the original script was like holy grail of absurdity kind of thing, where it was just like constant barrage of just batshit insane stuff.
I think it could be that, and I think I feel like he would have strengthened, like there are elements, like David Bowie's character doesn't seem to have a lot of motivation unless you look closely and read into, like, the picture book she has on her desk as the movie first starts has a shot of like her mom with David Bowie, and like that they had this like breakup.
Yeah.
And so like
well, it almost seems like he's meant to be her dad, but then they had like, it was like the real dad and a stepmom.
Right. And then the weird thing too is sort of like they almost act like he's a rock star that she fantasizes about, and like he's offering, like, you could have me.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, that's why I wrote the thing out right there in the list. There's one point in one of the songs where I'm like, does the Goblin King just want to smash? There's one of the songs where he's like giving her looks and stuff, and like all of a sudden she appears in like a wedding gown, and I'm like, does the Goblin King want to bang this young person. I'm
Right,
trying to
and
go a little lighter on
well, and then
my
okay,
jokes.
like if you think about too, like she was offered a peach to eat, and then there was a poison worm in it.
Peach eating ass.
Uh,
Wisdom.
gosh, I'm saying like if Ken Russell had have made this film, which I know you don't know who that is, but
I've
if
heard
any
that.
listener out there knows who Ken Russell is, then you know exactly the point that I'm getting at about the symbolism.
I've
So it's
heard
like
this name.
if someone else would have made this, he made Lair of the White Worm, Crimes of Passion, Tommy, um,
I haven't
Altered
seen any of
States.
these.
I know, but he's a fucking fantastic director. Anyway, I think the symbolism would have been more on the nose, but there's this certain things like there's a lot of like toxic masculinity
Yeah.
about like the little character that all he wants to do is fight, and she's like, okay, now we have to be quiet, we need to sneak
Yeah.
in, and it's like I would defend you, my lady,
That's my he was my favorite character.
right?
He was just
Yeah,
fucking
he's fun.
hilarious. A squirrel that rides a dog and he just wants to fucking duel people. And he jousts the one guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's got the eye patch and everything, and he always
Yeah.
wants to, and he's like berating the dog for being scared when like all
Yeah.
the like cannons are going off.
Yeah. How about when the one cannon goes off and there's like the cannonball is like also a Muppet and it flies into the wall and it cuts to him and he's like, "Did I hit something?"
Now, I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere that that was Kenny Baker.
Really?
That I
That'd
like
be interesting.
again, it might just be an internet rumor, and I'm spreading more falsehoods because I didn't look at. I saw that Kenny Baker was in the credits.
I know all you do is read up
All I do
on
is
random internet bullshit and
just
spread
believe it
lies.
all. So don't go quoting me on this. But
I
I
wouldn't
know,
say that Garrett is a Russian propaganda bot,
but
only because he's a propaganda bot for everything.
so I know Kenny Baker is in the movie because he's in the
Yeah.
credits, but I don't know at what point it is. So I would, because the assumption is that is him, I'm going to say that maybe that was him. He is somewhere in the film though, but
Yeah.
that might be the scene that he's in. I don't.
That was one of the funniest little tiny bits to me was the cannonball guy that like when he's stuck in the wall is like, "Tell me I hit something, please." It was my whole purpose in life. Or what about the machine gun guy that just gets fucking crushed? Then he's like,
Right.
It's all right. I'll just walk it off."
That's a very Terry Jones line.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know about you. My favorite part is definitely the fiery guy dance. When they like jump out in front of her and they're like, "Where are you?" And then they do like the big dance or whatever, and they're talking about like ripping her head off and shit.
Right. I
So
really
good.
like the fact that it's like it's against the rules or whatever to rip other people's heads off. You can't rip other people's heads.
Yeah. You can
What if
only
we
rip
tear
your
off your
own head
head?
off.
Yeah.
Or when she's climbing the thing and all of a sudden like the heads like they've been throwing their heads up and they're like, "Hey, you can't run away from us." And like the heads are falling back down and stuff.
Yeah, it's like their ears or their wings so they can flap
Yeah,
in place for a
yeah.
second. Yeah.
That's the thing is like every character that it comes across, this movie is just a string of like absurd, ridiculous characters basically that she runs into, and I love the shit out of that. That's all it
Yeah.
is like she just goes from absurd character to absurd character, and they're all these really like elaborately fascinating designed Muppets,
It's very
and
creative.
it's very creative. And then when you add in like just even if it's just a little spits of like the Python-y humor, it all just clicked for me for the majority of the movie. There were a couple of really slow and dumb parts, but it did not like the part where she like goes back into her house, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, it was all a dream," because it just lasts like I think it's only like a 3-minute scene, but it feels out of place. But then again, I like the collector character there or whatever, the old lady Muppet that's got like all the junk on her back, and she's like, "Oh, you know your favorite panda slippers here. You always like those."
Yeah, that was a thing that like I think originally in the script she was supposed to either be controlled by Jareth or like him in a costume trying to fool her into like
See,
staying asleep
that
and
could have been
missing the night.
interesting too. Is that if they had a little bit more of like there was like a David Bowie within a Muppet, like David Bowie was playing a Muppet,
Well, like the
like
one
here and
rock
there.
the rock
You know what I mean?
formation that was like his face.
Yeah,
Like I more of that type of visual symbolism showing that he's watching over without necessarily
that he's controlling every single facet of the entire place.
yeah, I like give him a little bit more motivation because like other than being able to like read into what he represented in her life, I think it would have been more interesting as to like why this specific kid, or like what different, why did he need another goblin, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
It was just like you have a house full of goblins that you're just sitting around and you hope she doesn't come. But he's like, he kind of plays by the rules, but also he kind of cheats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think those elements kind of made me think of the Frankensteinish method of the script being rewritten multiple times, or like having things in that got written out later, but they still had a part of it in.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
again,
I mean, the movie's pretty short. It's only 100
Right.
minutes. So even if it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes longer, and then you had maybe 2 or 3 more instances of like a short scene of her running into the David Bowie rock face and it's like taunting her or something, or just a few more interactions with Bowie only, and maybe it could have been a little better at showing his control over the entire labyrinth. But it's also it's all in her head anyway, so.
Right. I mean, but that's the thing, is like Bowie then becomes like overpowering and controlling of the audience's attention too.
Yeah, it'd almost be too much Bowie.
Well, I don't think you can have too much, but it's almost like the fact that if you have more than what's in there, then you want him to be the main character. You want to have everything by his point of view, and then you can't have that.
David Bowie is a better actor than Sting.
Could you imagine if David Bowie was in Dune?
That'd be awesome, dude. I mean, it wouldn't have saved that movie, but
I know. Yeah.
Oh, he's dead. I was gonna say, can you imagine if David Bowie's in Dune 2020? I forgot for a second he was dead. I'm sad.
Wow.
No, that was legitimate. Like, I'm actually sad now.
I mean, but Bowie was already in like a whole bunch of movies anyway.
Bowie's a weirdly decent actor. He's really good in The Prestige.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, he plays Tesla, and it was fucking fantastic.
Yep.
But I mean, not only was he an actor in, like the Man Who Fell to Earth or whatever the name of that Nicholas Roeg movie.
I mean, he just played himself, but.
Right. I mean, that's the thing though, is he dresses up in concert and plays different characters, so of course he's a good actor.
That's fair. That's fair. Bet you're pretty freaky, Bowie.
I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's been what? Surprised it took us 30 minutes for a Flight of the Conchord reference.
Because I wasn't going to encourage you.
Whatever. I think there's the perfect amount of Bowie within this movie.
That's fair.
There wasn't much that I honestly disliked about this. There were a couple of instances where parts were just boring or a little too slow. Like only a couple of actual like sections. Maybe it's like 2 scenes where I was like, actually, you know what? If you just cut those out and the movie was 90 minutes, it'd probably be perfect. But
it is a fun movie.
Yeah. Well, that's 100% what it is. It's just like I said at the top, like a fun little musical adventure comedy romp. I don't think it was much deeper than that. It was the obvious like coming of age story on top of that and all of that. But for the most part, it's like just fun. And Bowie's music is most of what carries it through.
Because I need to go ahead and get this out of the way. Hell goddamn baby no.
So I wasn't allowed really. You criticized me for making the Flight of the Conchords reference.
You're gonna make that. I'm gonna make my reference.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. We can't talk about Bowie in this movie without talking about the Bowie bulge, at least even for a half a second.
Go for it.
It's really bad. Could they not have like I think it was off air. We like the word codpiece was mentioned. Could they not have just had him in one? At least like a very visible like jock down there, like something covering, but very obviously like a codpiece would have been better. No, he's in like super tight spandex.
I have to say,
everything visible.
Watching it this time, it was not as noticeable.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I already knew it was there, and I didn't feel the need.
Literally, the first time he stood up, I was like, "What?
What?"
There was one part where Hogwart or whoever was like begging him, and his face was like right at his junk.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
ooh. Although like it wasn't as big in that part. I think they noticed while they were filming it. They're like, okay, this is gonna be pretty much a close up of his junk, so maybe we should tone it down a bit just for this part.
We do need to keep it at PG.
Yeah. We have just a fucking schlong in most of the movie. That's probably not PG. Dance, magic dance.
And I just keep thinking of Let's Dance.
Yeah.
But a boom, boom, boom. Bat, 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 bat. The whole rest of it's just going to be you doing sound effects from.
Yeah, Police
Yeah.
Academy. Let's dance. What kind of magic spell to use? In that song, there's this one Muppet. It's in like the second chorus, and he says the thunder and lightning thing, and he's looking right into the camera, and it's the funniest shit in the world. He just goes like thunder and lightning.
Right.
He's like totally
Yep.
just out of place, and it's just
Yep.
so funny. It's like he doesn't want to be singing the song, or he doesn't know the words, but
I,
he's really
I'm
enthusiastic.
I'm 100% sure I heard Elmo.
Kevin Clash is in the movie.
Yeah, I think he's one of the guys that lose their heads.
Yes, Kevin Clash was the fiery one, is what he called. I noticed that in the
Yeah.
credits only because of his bullshittery from 10 years ago or whatever. I don't remember if that was ever actually legitimized or not, but
Yeah. Well,
so we won't
matter.
dive into it. But
Yeah.
but yeah, the first part with the puppets was hilarious too, with the Muppets, I guess, when like she's about to put the curse on or whatever, and there's like the 8 of them like standing in the dark, like, is she gonna say it? Is she gonna say it? And then you got the big guy, he's like, did she say it yet? And then he's like hiding because he's all scared.
Right.
It's just like all of them just have such personality, and they all just feel like distinct creatures, and it's awesome. Which is more than I could say for Dark Crystal because I don't really remember that. Outside of a few of the Skeksis or whatever, the
Right.
vulture-looking guys having pretty distinct personalities. I can't think of anything else in that movie, any other creatures really. But in this, you have like everybody. Like you have the one, like the wise man, who apparently was played by Frank Oz, but not voiced by Frank Oz.
Yeah, I want to say none of them were voiced by any of the regulars.
Yeah,
But
which is
they were
interesting.
like David Goetz was a puppeteer. I know Brian
Although
Henson.
Brian Henson did the voice for Hogwarts or whatever.
Right, and he kind of Hoggle sort of has that Jim Henson sound, but not quite.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that
Hoggle was
helped him.
actually my least favorite out of the main bunch for being like the most main.
Yeah, and it's
He
like
was
I
just kind
think
of standard fare, and he was kind of a little bitch, to be
well,
honest. He couldn't pick
you're
a side,
you're
not even
supposed
towards
to
the end.
kind of not like him until the movie tells you to like him.
Yeah, until the end where she's like, Hoggle, you'll always be a part of my life, even though I've only known you for 13 hours. You always seem to, she says, like, you've always seemed to, at times in my life, show up at the best moments. And I'm like, you've known him for 13 hours. What do you mean times in your life? You're 15. How much time in your life have you had? You've had maybe 9 years of actual sentience. Anyway, fuck
I
you.
just wanted you to rant because it's usually me ranting.
Yeah, it's true. Well, the one part with the wise man, going back to that, he's not voiced by Frank Oz. That's another one of the characters that I really liked because he's got the really long white mustache, and he's like wise but also stupid. And then he's also got the little bird thing on top of his head that's like arguing with him the whole time
Right.
as his hat. It's like it's so difficult being your hat when he like falls asleep.
Hmm.
Man, just all of those little characters sprinkled throughout. Where that was what made it for me because I was never sure like what was going to come next, but once I noticed that was kind of the pattern it was doing, was like she travels for a little bit, she meets another kooky character, she travels for a little bit, she meets another one, and any of the time where it wasn't that, the movie was kind of off for me,
Right.
with the exception of Bowie because he's a kooky character in and of himself all the time. So,
Oh, and then you have to end it at the MC Escher staircase.
which was awesome. That scene is so good. Man, that scene is so good. It's good because of the Bowie music and because it's basically a Bowie music video. That's why it's good. But still, man, that scene is so good when when he's walking underneath her and he does like
Uh-huh.
the
Yep.
like the 180-degree like step or whatever.
That's
Man, is
great.
that ever good. God, this movie would have been a fiver for me if he didn't have like this. You could probably cut 10 minutes out of this and it would have been just this really tight 90-minute romp. I would have bought it immediately, watched it a bunch, but it was so close. It's just a good damn time. And I'm really glad that I picked it because I hadn't seen it before this. So I was really happy that I just had Magic Dance in my head. And that was what made me choose it for this fucking podcast. That and I figured we could get a couple other Muppetry out of the way, I guess. We talked a bit about Dark Crystal and a little less about the Muppet movie because we could probably still do an episode on that and the Muppet Caper probably. Or even just the Muppet Caper because I haven't seen that one yet. But
The Great Muppet Caper, thank you.
I'm cutting it out. I also said like Dark Crystal instead of the Dark Crystal. Do you want me to fucking? What do you want me to do here? Labyrinth is one word, okay? They got everything right in this movie. It's nice and tight. You only have to say one thing. Can't spell it, but you can say it. There's been a lot of rumors too about them doing a remake or a sequel to this movie in the last little while. I think they actually have a sequel in development.
With Jermaine?
No, God, that'd be great though. I want to say I want to say Derrickson is directing it, the guy that did Doctor Strange, but I don't know for sure. But you got to either get Jermaine Clement to do Goblin King, or you got to get Tilda Swinton, and there's no in between. How great would that be, Tilda Swinton? She literally looks like David Bowie.
But she's not David.
I know, but she was excellent friends with David Bowie.
I know, she was in his music video as his wife.
Yeah.
I personally,
I feel like if they're gonna pick anybody, she would be the one that he would have blessing to play the character for.
Probably. I almost wish they would do. This is probably controversial.
It is Scott Derrickson, by the way, the guy that did Doctor Strange and Sinister.
I can see Doctor Strange because a lot of the effects in Doctor Strange are similar to the MC Escher thing.
Yep.
I almost think that the character at the Labyrinth should be a woman, the
Yeah.
Goblin Queen.
Yeah, well then you have Tilda Swinton. It's a similar idea. It's not the same character. But it's a similar thing.
You need to have a singer play.
Lady Gaga.
I knew you were going to say that because she dresses up weird. I think it should
Well,
be someone
but she's
who
a
doesn't
decent
dress.
actor too, and she's a good singer. She could be eccentric. That's the thing. Why? Who are you thinking?
I'm not, because it should
Oh.
be remade.
Oh God, yeah, that's true. Well, it's definitely a sequel, but it's not like the
But
same
that's the thing, is
story,
a
at least,
sequel
but-
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Because
well, it'll just be
unless
and it's only in her head, right?
so yeah, unless it's Jennifer Connelly now, and she's like giving something to her daughter, and her daughter gets swept away to it.
You'd like that though, because then Jennifer Connelly would be in a movie.
Like, she's not in movies now.
She was in Spider-Man. She played. That's like, I don't know. That's funny to me though, because she's married to Paul Bettany, right? Who was Jarvis in Iron Man's, and then
And
she
Vision.
was Spider-Man's. Yeah, obviously, and then she's Spider-Man's AI in Spider-Man: Homecoming, like keeping it in the family as AI companions to characters.
Yeah,
But I mean, I guess she'll never be in another Marvel movie though, because like Spider-Man doesn't have that tech anymore, and also Tony Stark's dead.
wow, spoilers.
Fuck you. Highest grossing movie in the world. I can spoil it openly, and I will to the end of days. I want to run around on the street and say that he's dead. He's dead. He's dead.
Taking it to the street.
I kept thinking throughout this that he could do a stage adaptation of it too. I don't know how, but it'd be pretty cool. For some reason, I thought I remember them saying that they were trying to pull it off as well.
Yeah, you feel like it would be pretty straightforward. It would be difficult to have a baby character like act like you want it to.
Well, they've had babies in Broadway before.
On Broadway.
So let's see. In 2018, Jim Henson's Labyrinth being made to a stage musical. Brian Henson was involved.
But I don't think Brian Henson is even with. Is he dead too?
No, he's alive. Chairman of the Jim Henson Company, at least in 2018. He did a Muppet movie a couple of years ago that was apparently terrible.
Yeah, it was. Fucking, I hated it.
That Happy Time Murders or whatever. That was Brian Henson. You're talking about the actual Muppet movies. Those he was not
Yes,
involved in those.
I know.
And you're wrong about them being terrible.
Whatever. You don't fucking know anything.
Wow. I'm sorry that I like the Flight of the Conchords version of the Muppets. My bad. What's this? What's the power of the Dark Crystal?
To me, the thing, once Jim
Another
Henson,
series, or is this a movie?
Once Jim Henson died, the Muppets died with him. In my estimate.
Yeah, well, that's fair, but you're a moron. I'm kidding, fuck. I guess they're making another Dark Crystal. I do have to watch Age of Resistance, because apparently it is really, really good. Now, he's not involved in that at all, which is interesting. So maybe he is split off from... He's involved in that movie, The Power of the Dark Crystal, or whatever that is, but he wasn't involved in the TV series that they just made. So when did Jim Henson die? In the 80s?
90.
What's worse, the Brian Henson Muppet movies or the modern Muppet movies? The modern ones, because
The modern ones are, they're completely divorced from Henson's vision. They're movies for idiots.
Wow.
Like, I mean, but seriously, it's like the Muppets were always like intelligent, and they were things that kids could enjoy, but they weren't aimed at children. It's not like Sesame Street. It's not dumbed down. But the actual Muppet movie, the lead Muppet is a moron.
Yeah.
And it's like they actually dumbed down the characters, and the Muppets themselves are actually side characters in their own film. They don't understand any of it at all. Frank Oz has come out on Twitter and has taught, like, he says he doesn't want to say anything bad, but like he does not like the way the new Muppets are.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anything to do with any of them.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and it's the same thing with Gonzo. Like, that guy was still alive, but they didn't ask him to come back and do anything or do any voices. I mean, it's just like Joel.
I mean, he plays Gonzo in the Muppets, but like in the new movie.
In the Most Wanted
David
movie?
Goals. Yeah. Maybe not in Most Wanted, but certainly in 2011 Muppets. David Goals is credited as Gonzo, Honeydew, Waldorf, Zoot, Beauregard. He's also credited as them in Most Wanted. So gotcha! I'm the winner. I like how you're looking it up even though I'm on IMDb.
No, I was trying to remember what it was that I had heard, and I was trying to see if I could see the thing that Frank Oz had said.
No, I can totally agree with that point of it being that they take that like the human characters are almost the main characters in it. So, wait, Jermaine Clement is in Muppets Most Wanted?
Yeah.
That's literally a Flight of the Conchords movie. That's literally the closest thing we're ever gonna get. And that saddens me. They should actually make a Flight of the Conchords movie is what I'm trying to say. That's the closest thing that they're ever gonna get. I didn't know Flight of the Conchords was nominated for like 8 Emmys. Jermaine's going to be in Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, good for him. I'm glad he's getting work.
That's what I was going to say. At least he's got gigs. We can move on from this dead air and you hating me if you want to.
What? No, I was like literally rubbing my eye.
Well, you sound so like, I can't believe that I brought it up. Maybe we should just burn all Muppets and never touch them again at all.
It's the whole Disneyfication of taking something and then converting it into their own means, but then at the same time making the old stuff unavailable. Like, they only allowed the first 3 seasons on DVD to be released, and then they cut off the rest of the seasons and they're not releasing anymore. None of the original Muppet stuff is on Disney Plus. Muppet Babies never came out for anything. And it used to be because the rights were all entangled. You know, it's like Muppet Babies actually had stuff from like ILM and George Lucas, so they had clips of Star Wars. Well, they couldn't put that out on disc because that was owned by multiple corporations and it was a distinct thing. But Disney owns Star Wars and Muppets and Fox and all the stuff now, so they could release all that stuff. They just don't want to. And it's the same thing with the Star Wars. There's the original cuts that won all the awards that's in the Library of Congress and all that. No, they don't care.
It's not in the Library of Congress, but
the original negative is in the Library of Congress.
When did they give it? George Lucas said he had destroyed it and he didn't give it.
It's almost like George Lucas will tell lies and not tell the same story twice. Anyway, it's this big corporation sitting on things and wanting to alter things to be their own viewpoint on it and not have other viewpoints out there. So, like, they pissed me off already by trying to act like that history doesn't, so that no new person that either didn't see it air or don't have the old tapes or can't watch clips of it on YouTube or whatever just doesn't know that this thing ever. And I don't like.
Sorry that I brought it up, and when we brought the podcast right down.
Well, I mean, it's, to me, I mean, people's life work and their vision on, like, I'm a patron of the arts. Like, the films that have been lost or are forgotten, I love for there to be a new version in the fact of, like, there's a restoration or if there's a print found or something that is made available so that people could view it. It's like Disney likes to say those things never happened. Song of the South? No. What are you talking about? That's not a thing. But it was. I mean, I could understand the reason why they won't necessarily release it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like Warner Brothers has Tom and Jerry cartoons and Looney Tunes cartoons that are and were racist. You know, there was the lady that's Mammy. That's obviously a character like it almost in blackface. It's a very stereotypical black woman. But they had before the Blu-ray that we realize it's culturally insensitive, and the fact that not only is it not right now, it wasn't right then. But we also think not having these things presented in the way that they originally were tries to cover over or diminish the fact that it was wrong then. So we're going to present it to you exactly the way that it was and say that this isn't a right portrayal, and we understand that, but we want to show you that this is how it historically was.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I applaud that. You're going to release it, but put a disclaimer on it and say, no, these things are wrong, but we want to have it uncut in the way that it was originally done. The problem is, in subsequent series, they decided not to release them, even though they were remastered, because someone had a bug up their bonnet somewhere in the hierarchy of the production line, and decided, no, we're not going to release them. So now I have like Blu-rays of Tom and Jerry when the second one was announced, but they're not going to release it because of that. Even though it's not hurting anybody, and it is a historical thing. It's like they would rather just forget about it and never bring it up because it's difficult to talk about, or it's disquieting in the thoughts of people, and they would rather ignore it. And ignoring it doesn't help the issue, as we've seen in the news in the past months.
No, I agree with you.
But
They
there's
do have
nothing
a scrubbing of clean of everything.
But the problem
That is
is
the problem.
there's nothing like that in the Muppets. It's not we're not doing it because all the Muppets were in blackface and it was highly racial. It's like the Muppets are like the cleanest, most sterile, like most accepting thing. You know, there was like on Sesame Street there was a Muppet that had HIV or AIDS, you know, and it's like there's like, I want to say there's like a non-gendered Muppet. There's like, but anything like that you can think of.
That's
like
not Disney, I don't think, which is why maybe they're still having it around.
But I'm pretty sure that they
That's
own all
HBO.
that, so.
I don't know.
All right. Well, anyway, like it just I mean, let's call it what it is, the whitewashing of these types of media that like just we refuse to acknowledge that they exist.
Yeah.
And I you know, but like I said, the Muppets don't have any of those issues. So I don't know if it's just they feel like it won't make any money or
yeah,
what
then there's no reason for them to not have it on like Disney Plus.
Yeah, there's no reason for them not to
Because
have
they got
it
shit
on
on there that's
physical
not
media.
going to make any money.
Yeah, I mean that's the
Well,
thing.
I understand even not having it on physical media if they don't think it's going to make money, because then there's production costs to the discs and all of that kind of stuff. But then to not just hit the upload button.
No, what
and put it up online.
They have a studio think of like old stuff equals diminishing what our new things are.
Yeah.
So they can't say, oh yeah, all those Star Wars books that you bought, those are still canon, but this is canon too. They can't do that. They have to say, oh, all the old stuff, no, that's Legends. It's a completely different thing. None of that is new. None of that means anything. And then they just reincorporate it into what they're doing so that they don't have to pay the rights for the old stuff. So it's a business decision, not an artistic decision.
Yeah, especially probably because they're still making Muppet stuff. I assume they'll want to make a third one eventually.
But that's the thing.
So they don't want to release the old stuff.
The Muppet stuff sucks ass, and it's not anywhere near as good as the old stuff, and it doesn't live up to the reputation of the old stuff. So rather than releasing the old stuff and probably making the same amount or more money, they would rather churn out the crap that they decided.
Well, it's because if they release the old stuff, they'll be almost admitting that their stuff is bad.
Well, and then they'll have to pay rights to other people to use the old stuff, and they'll have to give residuals. And they would rather keep everything in-house with all the people that they can control.
Yeah.
And I hate that kind of business decision.
Anyway, Labyrinth is not at all owned by Disney.
Who owns Labyrinth?
I want to say like Universal or something.
Yeah, because wasn't the starting logo like TriStar? I don't know who owns
TriStar, so Sony. TriStar is owned by Columbia, which is owned by Sony.
Yep.
So I don't want to say there's still hope, because sequels and remakes obviously are bad, but
yeah, Sony is actually pretty terrible when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Movies in general, but you know, at the very least, David Bowie's bulge won't be blurred out of any future releases of Labyrinth because it's deemed unsafe for kids.
Well, that's why I went ahead and bought the 4K.
Yeah. Until they patch your movies somehow.
No, all you have to do is
they put your disc in your player and the the disc reader rewrites the Blu-ray right in front of your eyes.
Well, first off, that is not a technology that exists.
It will.
Secondly, all you'd
When
have to do
Disney
is
owns everything.
you'd have to unplug it from the internet. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. Until you that's the first movie you put in, and it erases the bulge, and that's how you figure it out that the world has gone to shit. Disney owns. And
I
whitewashing
guarantee
everything, and then
you
you're like, oh no, the
that
Bowie bulge.
someone else would put their
Release
disc
the
in
bulge
first.
cut.
The bulge hashtag bulge cut.
Yeah, the battle of the bulge, the people versus Disney. Yep, that's the joke I want to end it on.
That's fair.
Even though I don't even want to end it, that's such a good joke. The battle of the bulge. Come on, laugh. No, it's disingenuous. It doesn't feel right. Anyway, back to my other point, because James Bobbin directed the modern Muppet movies. When are we getting a Flight of the Conchords movie? I mean, now seems like the perfect time, right? They're all like stars now. He doesn't even have to direct it. You can get Taika to direct it. And you just have... Because Taika arguably directed a lot of my favorite episodes of the show anyway. So, when are we getting a movie? Imagine a road trip. All of them.
Personally, I think it's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the concert they did recently was really good.
Well, yeah, because they're stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
But it's like to do an entire series.
Well,
it's
I
one
mean,
of those
I know
like,
it was rushed too, but even the second season isn't as good as the first season.
Right. And the thing is too, with characters like the ones they portray, the older you get, the harder it is to buy in that the people would still act the way that they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the problems with like the Dumb and Dumber sequel. It's not like the first movie was smart, and that's the reason why it was fun.
But now that they're like 55-year-old men, it's just sad.
Yeah, it is, and that's a lot of the things. Is like Jay and Silent Bob, the new one. It's like, wow, haven't you guys moved on yet? You know, it's like it's different if you're like,
oh, and Bill and Ted.
Yeah, and I'm really afraid of the Bill and Ted thing because it's like the character, the actors and the people have moved on and done all these things with their life, but then they have to regress to these characters, and that's a really, really hard thing to pull off both in writing and acting. So it's like
I'm hoping at the very least that'll be fun to see everybody back in, back together. But
it can
at the same
be.
time, Dumb and Dumber 2 was not.
I mean,
even though I love Jim Carrey and I love Jeff Daniels.
Think about over the last 20 years, the last couple decades. Have there been anything where there's been a long gap of time where the people came back to it and it was like just as good or better? I can only think of one.
Blade Runner 2049.
That's not the same people.
Different director, same writer, Harrison Ford. Close enough.
Well, that's not Philip K. Dick.
Same writer as the movie, Hampton Fletcher.
I
Checkmate.
think no. First off, arguably the story is not better.
Oh well,
like the special effects. The special effects are better just because. I mean, I don't even know if it's better.
I just
honestly.
don't like Blade Runner, and I like Blade Runner 2049.
Well, that's the thing is I don't necessarily like Blade Runner, and I don't necessarily love Blade Runner, and I don't necessarily love Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
So I don't think that one is greater than the other in such an extreme to where so it's like if it did it as good, I mean it wasn't as influential. I wouldn't say.
No, because nobody wanted to watch a 3-hour noir in the age of shooty explosion Marvel movies.
It's not really a noir either, though.
Nobody wanted to watch a 3-hour R-rated movie. Period. That ended up being slow.
A lot of my favorite movies are 3-hour long.
Yeah, I know, but you're a fucking moron. And...
But anyway, I mean, but that's again,
if the world was filled with you, though, the world would be an incredibly different place.
I mean, Harrison Ford isn't the main character; he's a side character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like a continuation of okay, here's Harrison Ford, still a Blade Runner, 30 years later.
Well, that's the thing is, I think if you had him as the main character, you would have fallen into the Dumb and Dumber 2 and what you're talking about Flight of the Conchords thing with. If he was the main character, you'd be like, why the fuck is he still a Blade Runner? Didn't he escape this life at the end?
So that's the thing is, I'm saying
character is smart.
That's what I'm saying is
the movie is
good
gotcha.
Name something where it's still the main character having to pick up, like the Han Solo getting picked up that much longer and he hasn't changed at all, and so it doesn't work at all, and they don't even get back together within the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only one I can think of.
Ew, I didn't even... Well, I guess they do have one scene. Anyway, what's one new you can think of?
The Return.
Oh, fuck you.
That's the only one. I mean, being serious, that's the only one I can think of that surpassed the original and
Yeah.
opened up the world and made it to where it was like interesting. And it's like, and the thing is, the character basically had been stunted for those 25 years.
Yeah.
Like he had not moved at all. The town moved around him, but he was stuck and did not change at all. And it's about him getting back to the status quo, which of course he wasn't successful in either. So it's like in a show that doesn't give you the things that you might necessarily think that you want, it was actually a better show for it. But that's the only one I can think of where it's like nothing basically happened to that character until we pick it up again, and then we see the repercussions of
Why nothing happening
changed.
mattered.
Yes. Because everything else, it's a negative that nothing happened. Or it's like a comedic duo that get back together again. You know, it's like the Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly. Oh, we're going to do a Sherlock movie. And it was like bombed. And people were sick of seeing them together, I guess. Or they didn't do it well. I didn't watch the movie.
It was PG.
Well, that probably doesn't help either.
The studio, Sony, forced it on their hand.
You know, or it's like all the like Judd Apatow movies where it's the same people every time in them. You know, and it's like diminishing returns, and it's like you're kind of like, okay,
when you peaked and knocked up, cut it out.
I mean, that's the thing is like when you're in like your mid to late 20s or even like 40-year-old virgin era where it's like there's this one guy that's a loser and everyone's kind of making fun of him for not moving on. But when your movie is everyone is a loser and everyone hasn't moved on, you know, it's kind of like you're like, well, okay, you really need to get up. Could you imagine if the before movies were like that?
Hey, there's 10 years is a gap.
I know. That's why I said multiple decades.
And if you want to go even 20 years just between the first and the third.
But that's the thing.
They do change, though.
That's the thing, yeah. The characters are in completely different places. We're literally picking them up, and the characters act
it's
as
like
if
they existed within.
Yes. So
like
they have matured and things have changed, and we're picking it up again to see what have happened.
We'll do that eventually. Let's not talk too much about that. I literally thought about watching them all again.
Yeah.
Because they're that good. Well, I can't think of any other examples, so fuck you.
Thanks.
I concede my argument, but also you should fuck yourself.
Wow.
And that's the modern way of arguments.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So you can quit it anytime you want, by the way.
Fuck
you know.
You just want to play the game.
That is true, but also, I mean, if you want, I will talk all night about movies.
That's true. I mean, we could do both. But in that case, because I don't want to have to edit a 7-hour thing, because if we ever do a 7-hour podcast, I'm either going to drop it unedited or throw it out.
No, unedited would be fantastic. So you could
we can have all those awkward silences of you fucking hating me as I bring up the Muppets Disney stuff.
Well, the problem is I was in a good mood to do the podcast. Then we talked about stuff that put me in a bad mood. Then I told a bunch of naughty jokes at the beginning that were completely hilarious, but we edited them out and then restarted.
Well, that's because they were really bad.
I know.
And we probably should not put them in as the first thing.
I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying that's how the ebb and flow works. So you have to get me talking for another hour for me to calm back down again in order to be okay.
Wow. Whatever.
You
have any closing thoughts on Labyrinth?
Yes, it's a fun movie. It's a good movie. It definitely needs to be watched, and I think the 4K is the way to go if you're going to buy it in physical because it looks great.
You're such a fucking moron. Just literally squeezing in any opportunity to go like, and I recently got a 4K TV, and let me tell you, it's good. I'm not going to do any of the end tag stuff. I don't think it's too long for no reason.
Sounds good to me. Brother. Danielle, my brother.